exit the trailer here and go to the under construction tornado shelters where they thought most of the men would be that morning trying to finish up the shelters themselves. The second trailer, they were supposed to disembark and crash through the front door, part of the team. The other part of the team was to come around the side, up these ladders, and into what they thought was the gun room. And another small part of that second cattle trailer team, they were supposed to go and suppress the dogs, either with a fire extinguisher or, if need be, with gunshots. In fact, so far the testimony that's come out of the trial is that the opening shots may in fact have been fired by ATF agents at the cattle trailers.
When David Koresh saw the ATF agents piling out of the cattle trailers, he opened the front door and made an attempt to stop the attack.
I opened the front door as they were running up. Of course, you know, their tactical expertise, they've got their guns aimed and everything. They started hollering, you know, all of them hollered. I didn't know what they were saying. And I was already hollering. I was saying, you know, hey, go away. You know, I was hollering, go away. There's women and children here. Let's talk. They started firing at me. And so what happened was is that I fell back in the door and the bullets started coming through the door. And so then what happened was some of the young men and stuff started firing on them.
Koresh's version of the attack was later confirmed by Brad Branch in a phone call from the McLennan County Jail.
When they jumped out, David opened the door and put his hand out and says, "Now hold on, we have women and children in here." And bullets started hitting the door and all through the foyer, and that's when we slammed the door.
6 Branch Davidians were killed during the attack. Among them was Australian-born Peter Gent, who was working inside the old water tower and simply looked out to see what was going on.
Peter Gent was shot here on top of the water tower while he was working, cleaning out the inside of the water tower. He came to the top level that he had built. He'd built several levels so that he could clean out the inside of it from top to bottom, and when he poked up over the top level there, he was shot.
David Koresh's father-in-law, Perry Jones, was standing behind him when he opened the front door. Jones took several bullets meant for Koresh and died about an hour later.
The child's testimony to Dr. Perry concerning the holes, the dots that she drew in the roof, corroborate with what a lot of other people that were in there said, including Catherine Madison and Dick DeGuerin. Dick DeGuerin was interviewed by Diane Sawyer on ABC Primetime, and he stated in this interview that he clearly saw the ceiling as it appeared looked quote-unquote like Swiss cheese because it had holes all in it from bullets fired through the roof. The only way obviously these bullet holes could be in the ceiling through the roof is from helicopter fire.
And I've talked to David Jones's little 6-year-old daughter, and I asked her, what did you do on February 28th? What happened? And she said that bullets started coming through the roof, and she ran and hid under her bed, and her brother, who was a couple years older than her, ran down the hall and to the stairwell.
As a matter of fact, Winston Blake, who was one of the people killed inside Mount Carmel on the first day, he was found with a bullet hole through the top of his head, and he was still holding a piece of French toast.
I was stupefied when I heard the bullets coming, because it was like, you know, it was so frightening. You hear the bullets coming in, you don't know why, where, how. There was nothing you could do, you know. It was frightening. Nobody had any time to prepare for anything. It was just so sudden.
The last shooting that day occurred around 7 p.m. and was reported by the news media in this manner.
A couple of hours ago, about 7 o'clock tonight, there was more gunfire. 3 members of the cult came out of the compound firing at ATF agents. One of the members was killed, another was taken into custody, and a third was apparently
injured. That news
injured,
report was a complete lie. Once again, Ron Cole sets the record straight.
Mike Schroeder, Bob Kendrick, and Norman Allison were not inside Mount Carmel Center on the morning of February 28th when this raid took place. All 3 of them were at the Mag Bag several miles away when they heard about the raid on the radio. They made the decision, after hearing about the raid, to try to get back home. Mike Schroeder had his wife, his baby boy inside. Nobody knew who was alive or dead or what had happened exactly. Mike Schroeder attempted a mad dash from off the property, trying to get over this fence and to the paint shop on Mount Carmel. Unfortunately, he was seen by Special Agent Darrell Dyer, who had his outpost set up since before the raid in the hay barn off the property. Mike ran towards this fence, and although he was unarmed, well, he was armed with nothing but a stun gun. Darrell Dyer emptied his 30-round submachine gun magazine into Mike, striking him 7 times in the back. Agent Dyer fired one burst at him, but somehow Mike kept on struggling. Got about 10 feet from the property line here, and where you see these sections cut off of this tree, that's where his body rests for several days before they saw fit to remove him.
The official reason for the raid on Mount Carmel was to search for illegal weapons and arrest David Koresh. However, as it turns out, most of the guns were not even there.
We did have somewhat of a collection, but the weapons were never intended to...
Paul Fata, who worked gun shows all over Texas and who lived up at Mount Carmel, who in fact was responsible for most of the gun purchases through the mag bag that he rented out. On February 28th, that morning while the raid took place, he was at a gun show in Austin with his son, along with most of the weapons that the ATF had come there to seize.
There was a business that David was conducting with selling firearms.
Paul Fata and David Koresh sold guns and other merchandise at gun shows, as do many gun dealers. This was a perfectly legitimate enterprise and gave David Koresh a chance to talk to people about his religious beliefs.
I met the guy one time real briefly at a gun show a couple of years ago. I was passing out flyers and he wanted to talk guns in the Bible, so
The ATF wasn't looking for Bibles when they raided Mount Carmel, but they should have known that most of the guns were in Austin with Paul Fata.
The ATF had an undercover house across the street, 100 yards away from the front door of Mount Carmel Center. They had that place under surveillance 24 hours a day, every day, for weeks prior to the February 28th raid. And they had to be aware of the fact that Paul was working these gun shows. And it seems to me, unless they're completely ignorant of reality, they ought to have been able to see from 100 yards away Paul leaving to go to this gun show, and after weeks of surveillance, and several of these shows should have figured out that the vast majority of those weapons would not have even been there.
Guns may not have been the only thing the ATF was looking for.